Hey everyone, ready to dive into something that really got me thinking.
I'm ready. What's on your mind?
Okay, so it's this whole idea of, making the most of what this one YouTuber calls the youth of our senior years, which, by the way, isn't just for like actual seniors. It's about making the most of life no matter how old you are right now.
He really makes you think about health, time, and what actually makes us feel fulfilled as we get older. Like, what does it really mean to age well?
Totally. It was like a wake-up call for me, honestly. I kept thinking, okay, what am I doing today that'll, set me up for a future I'm actually excited about?
I know, right? It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and forget about the bigger picture.
Totally. We only have around 1,000 weeks, maybe less, after 60, where we can really enjoy life to the fullest. Travel, hobbies, all that.
Makes you want to grab a calendar and start counting, right?
Seriously, imagine actually calculating your own 1,000-week countdown.
Wow. I bet that would change how you prioritize things.
For sure. What you say yes to,
Yeah.
and maybe what you finally say no to.
I like that. Saying no to make space for the things that truly matter.
Exactly. And that brings me to another thing that really hit me in the video. The way he talks about time being more valuable than money. He even uses Warren Buffett as an example.
Warren Buffett,
Yeah.
the billionaire investor.
The one and only. And the video basically says that even Buffett would probably trade a huge chunk of his fortune for, more healthy, active years.
It makes sense when you think about it. At a certain point, what's more valuable? Another $1 billion or another year of good health to spend with loved ones? Pursue your passions.
Right. It's like a classic example of opportunity cost.
Totally. Like, we might be earning a good living right now, but what are we giving up to do that? Time with our families, maybe, our own health? It really makes you think.
Big time. It's not always about retiring early or anything like that.
It's about realizing that our time is literally our most valuable asset.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So are we spending it in a way that feels worthwhile? That's the question.
Right. Are we actually living our lives or just, going through the motions? That leads perfectly into this idea he talks about, life bucket lists. Have you heard of that?
I have. It's from Bill Perkins' book, Die with Zero. It's a fascinating read.
Okay, so I haven't gotten to that one yet. What's the basic idea?
Well, he argues that we should try to spend all our money and experience all we can before we, die.
Yeah.
But, in a strategic way.
So it's not just about, blowing all your cash on crazy stuff.
No, not at all. It's about being intentional with our time and resources. And I think what's powerful about his approach is that it makes you think about your health and capabilities at different stages of life.
So it's not just like a bucket list of things you want to do someday. It's about figuring out when in life those things are actually doable, given your health and energy level.
Exactly. Makes total sense.
Like if your dream is to hike the Appalachian Trail, well, that might be better suited for your 40s or 50s than your 70s.
That's a great example. A life bucket list helps you map out those aspirations, but in a realistic way.
And it prevents you from putting off those dreams until, it's too late.
Exactly. And the best part is, it's never too early to start creating one. It's about not only dreaming big, but also strategically planning those experiences for when we're most likely to enjoy them.
Love that. Aligning your aspirations with your health span.
Exactly. And I think that ties into another point he makes, rethinking retirement.
Oh, yeah. He's not a fan of just automatically clocking out at 65.
Nope. He suggests that 65 shouldn't be the default finish line. We should each figure out what the ideal time is for us, based on more than just our bank accounts.
He really emphasizes that. Like, what about the time we want with our kids before they grow up? Or being there for our aging parents?
Right. Those are huge considerations.
And they often get overshadowed by just the money aspect.
Absolutely. It's about looking at the bigger picture and realizing that retirement isn't just about finances.
It's about living a full life.
Okay.
And that includes our relationships and the experiences we share. Speaking of which, there's this thing he says about the hidden stress of work, even if we're used to it.
Yeah, even if we think we're handling it well, it can still impact our health over time.
That hit me hard. I can't tell you how many times I've said, oh, I thrive on stress. But when you really think about it, can any of us honestly say that chronic stress doesn't take a toll?
It's like we get so used to operating at a certain level of stress that we don't even realize how it's affecting us, like mentally, physically.
Yeah, it's scary when you think about it that way. So how do we, break free from that cycle. The video doesn't really dive into specific stress management techniques, does it?
No, not really. It's more about encouraging us to make our well-being a priority, which can look different for everyone.
Right. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Exactly. For some, it might be setting boundaries around work hours or like making time for exercise. Others might need more structured practices like, yoga or therapy.
It's about finding what works for you and being proactive, managing stress before it manages you, which actually ties in nicely with what he says about relationships. You know, that whole thing about spending quality time with loved ones?
Absolutely. And not taking those moments for granted.
Right. He uses those examples of like spending time with children and aging parents. And it really makes you question, how are you prioritizing your time? Are you giving enough to the people who matter most?
Because, as he reminds us, time really is finite, especially that quality time with the people we love.
So true. It's like, okay, you can always make more money.
But you can't make more time.
Exactly. Which is why that whole life bucket list thing is so important. It's about being intentional.
Yes, and proactive. Instead of just letting life happen to you, it's about making choices that align with what's truly important. And speaking of choices, I love how he talks about adventures.
Right? Whether it's traveling or just trying something new, those experiences keep us well.
Alive. Engage with the world.
Totally.
It's never too late to try something new or even, rediscover an old passion.
Thank you.
Is there something you've always wanted to do but haven't made time for?
Let me think. You know what? I've always wanted to take a pottery class. I just never.
There you go. Maybe this is the push you need.
Maybe it is. And speaking of pushes, I think the video does a good job of addressing that fear of the unknown, like not knowing what to do with yourself after retirement. That's something a lot of people struggle with, right?
Absolutely. Our work can become such a big part of our identity.
It's scary to think about life without it.
For sure. But the video does a nice job of reframing retirement,
As like an opportunity.
Exactly. It's a chance to reinvent yourself, explore new passions, maybe even contribute to the world in a different way.
And he specifically mentions a book for this, Arthur Brooks's From Strength to Strength.
Right. It's all about how our definition of success evolves as we get older. Like in early adulthood, it's often about building our careers, external markers of success,
But as we age, we start to focus more inward.
toward deeper meaning and fulfillment.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired.
Hmm.
Retirement doesn't have to be this like scary, uncertain thing.
Right. It can be a chance to redefine yourself, embrace a whole new chapter.
So to wrap up this first part of our dive,
It seems like the key takeaway is that we need to be intentional with our time, prioritize experiences over stuff.
and remember that our health span is precious. So we need to make choices that align with our long-term goals.
For a truly fulfilling life.
What do you think?
Couldn't agree more. And it's never too early to start thinking about these things, no matter where you are in life. One thing I really appreciate about this video is it doesn't just like throw out these big ideas and then leave you hanging.
Yeah, it actually like gives you some practical steps you can take.
Exactly. So it's not just motivational fluff. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, here's how to actually make some changes.
Right, it's like a roadmap or something.
Totally. And it starts with like shifting your mindset.
Yeah, instead of just assuming you'll retire at 65.
Right. He's like, wait, why is that the magic number? Maybe it's not the right time for you?
It's about having that honest conversation with yourself.
Like, what are your real priorities? Is it money or is it experiences, relationships?
And I think it's important to say those aren't always totally separate,
Oh, totally. Some people love their work and find it really fulfilling.
Right, it's not like everyone needs to quit their job tomorrow.
Exactly. It's about finding what works for you. But I think that tension between work and well-being is really interesting. Like he talks about the hidden stress of work.
Yeah, even if you're used to it, even if you think you're handling it well.
It can still impact your health over time.
Totally. I remember reading this study about how even low levels of stress can increase your risk of all sorts of health problems later on.
It's crazy, right? Like you get so used to operating at a certain level of stress.
You don't even realize it's taking a toll.
It's like that boiling frog analogy.
Oh yeah, if you drop a frog into boiling water, it jumps right out.
But if you slowly turn up the heat...
It doesn't realize the danger until it's too late.
Exactly.
So how do we break free from that cycle? The video doesn't really get into specifics, does it?
No, not really.
Yeah.
But it does encourage you to make your well-being a priority.
which looks different for everyone.
For sure. Maybe it's setting boundaries around work or making time for exercise.
Some people might need therapy or yoga or something.
Right. It's about finding what works for you and being proactive.
Manage the stress before it manages you.
I like that. And that ties into his whole thing about relationships, too, you know?
Yeah, spending time with family and loved ones.
Exactly. Those connections are so important.
He uses those powerful examples like spending time with kids and aging parents.
It's so easy to let those moments slip away.
Right, you get caught up in the daily grind and tell yourself you'll make time later.
And then later, it never comes.
That's why I think this life bucket list idea is so genius.
It's about being intentional and proactive with your time.
And I love how he talks about planning those experiences around your age and health.
It's like, okay, you might not be able to climb Mount Everest in your 80s.
Right, but maybe you can take that scenic train ride through the Alps.
Exactly. Adapt your aspirations as you go.
Make the most of every stage of life.
And it's never too late to try new things, which leads perfectly into his whole thing about adventures.
I love that part. Whether it's travel or a new hobby or just stepping outside your comfort zone. I wonder, is there anything you've always wanted to do but haven't made time for?
You know what? I've always wanted to learn to play the piano. I took a few lessons as a kid, but
There you go. Maybe this is the sign you've been waiting for.
maybe it is. And on that note of like trying new things, I think the video does a good job of addressing that fear of the unknown.
Like not knowing what to do with yourself after retirement.
It can be terrifying to think about life without work.
Especially if your job is such a big part of your identity.
Right. But the video reframes it as an opportunity.
To reinvent yourself.
Explore new passions.
Find new ways to contribute.
And he mentions Arthur Brooks's book, From Strength to Strength, as a great resource for navigating that transition.
That's the one about how our definition of success changes as we age, right?
Exactly. Like when you're younger, it's all about building your career and achieving those external markers of success.
But then as you get older, you start to focus more inward.
On finding deeper meaning and fulfillment.
Okay, I got to check out that book.
Yeah.
I'm feeling so much less anxious about retirement now.
Right. It doesn't have to be this scary unknown thing.
It can be a fresh start.
A chance to create a whole new chapter.
So to recap this part of our dive,
It sounds like the key message is to have a plan.
not just a financial plan, but a life plan.
Think about your values, your passions, your relationships.
Because if you don't have a plan,
It's easy to just drift
let life happen to you.
instead of actively shaping your own future,
And creating a life that's truly fulfilling.
which might mean making some tough choices along the way,
Saying no to some things so you can say yes to others.
stepping outside your comfort zone,
But ultimately, it's about creating a life that feels authentic to you.
a life that's full of joy, connection, and purpose.
I love that. And I think that's a perfect place to pause for now.
It's funny how we talk about retirement like it's the end of the line, you know?
Right, like you just stop working and that's it.
But this video really reframes it as a beginning.
Like a whole new chapter.
Exactly. You're not stopping, you're evolving. You're taking everything you've learned and experienced.
And using it to do something new and exciting.
Right. And the video acknowledges that finding your new purpose might take some time.
It's not always obvious what you want to do with all that free time.
Exactly. It's like a blank canvas. It can be overwhelming, but also really exciting.
And I think it's important to remember that you don't have to figure it all out alone.
Right. There are resources, people you can talk to.
Like mentors who can guide you.
Exactly. Or even just friends and family.
People who know you well and can offer some perspective.
Sometimes they can see things in you that you don't even see in yourself.
This whole deep dive has been so eye-opening for me, honestly.
So it's great to hear.
I'm starting to think about my priorities differently.
It's a good reminder that we have more control over our lives than we think.
Even small changes can make a big difference in the long run.
So for our listeners who are feeling inspired,
What's one thing they can do today to start putting these ideas into practice?
I'd say start with that 1,000 weeks concept we talked about.
The countdown
Yeah. Actually sit down and calculate how many weeks you realistically have left.
of good health.
I mean,
It sounds a little morbid. I know.
but I can see how it would be powerful.
It really puts things in perspective.
It makes you realize how precious time is.
Exactly. And when you realize that, you start to think differently about how you're spending your time.
So the question is,
If you knew you only had 1,000 weeks of good health left,
what would you do differently? Starting today,
who would you spend more time with?
what experiences would you prioritize?
What kind of legacy would you want to leave behind?
Wow, those are big questions.
But They're important ones.
And that's a great note to end on.
I think so too. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
We hope it's inspired you to rethink aging and retirement and all the choices you make every day.
To create a life that feels truly meaningful.
And fulfilling.
Until next time.